welcome back to Off the Post. In today's episode, I'll be discussing whether Bournemouth will lose 3 in a row this season. But before that, as always, please like, comment and subscribe. It's very much appreciated. And it goes a long way for me to build a small community on my channel, okay? We've recently just hit 258 subscribers. We're going up in subscribers, aren't we? Can we go and get the big 300? I'll be absolutely over the moon. I've said it for, quite a few episodes now. And if we can do that, I'll be buzzing, I'll be ecstatic, I'll be absolutely amazed, wouldn't I? And yeah, let's get straight into the episode, shall we? Obviously, Bournemouth are facing West Ham in the next fixture in the Premier League in game week 12, and for me, now West Ham have a great opportunity to get 3 wins in a row because they're on the back of winning 2 games, aren't they? Compared to Bournemouth losing 2 games in a row. So from that point of view, West Ham would be favourites going into this game. If we quickly look at some of their recent fixtures, okay, obviously West Ham beat Newcastle 3-1 and they beat Burnley 3-2. And, some decent goals in that game, in the likes of Thomas Souček scoring, in the likes of Thomas Souček scoring 2 goals in a row, back-to-back games and stuff. Callum Wilson scoring goals. That will boost up his goal bonus in his contract or whatever it is. You know what I mean. And yeah, it's looking very good for West Ham in recent weeks, okay. Obviously, coming off an international break, they will be very motivated to get that 3rd win under their belts, okay. And for me, if we just quickly bring it back to Bournemouth, just quickly, okay, they've currently lost 2 games in a row in, 3-1 against Man City and 4-0 against Aston Villa. Big scorelines against, Bournemouth in these recent game weeks. And for me, they've conceded so many goals, and you wouldn't have said that at the start of the season, would you? With how well their defenders have performed, how well their goalkeeper has performed. And it's a little bit tricky when you speak about Bournemouth because, again, you probably did think to yourself, that their defence probably wouldn't have been as good considering all the players they've lost in, Kerkez, Dean Huijsen, in I'm sure there's a 3rd one in there. I'm sure there's a 3rd one. The Ukrainian centre back as well who moved to PSG. You probably would have thought to yourself, they probably wouldn't have had such a strong start to the season as they would have. But now they're currently sitting in 9th in the Premier League on 18 points. But for me, it just goes to show how well they've actually done under Areola. Just because, right, they're level on points with like 3 or 4 teams in the Premier League. In Aston Villa, in Man United, in Liverpool, and then it's Bournemouth on 9th, okay, all on 18 points. So from that point of view, yes, they've lost, the last 2 recent games. However, it just goes to show how amazing they have done because they're still in the fight for those European places, whether that's, Champions League, Europa League, or even Europa Conference League. For me, they're well in the chance for, getting Conference League football this season, Bournemouth, especially if they can keep those attacking players scoring the goals in, Antonio Semenyo, Elie Krupa. For me, that French, 20-year-old striker, okay, he's been absolutely fantastic this season. Probably, a underrated player who I probably would not have thought of to, say he'd actually have a good season just because, coming from League 1, League 2, I'm pretty sure, I think actually probably League 2 at this point. I probably would have thought to yourself, he probably wouldn't be, a standout name in that Bournemouth team, especially how well, Evan Neilson performed the last season at least anyways. So from that point of view, he's sort of come good for them in the first 10 games, and hopefully he can keep up that form because he has scored quite a few goals, got a few assists here and there as well, alongside Antonio Semenyo. For me, he's probably been the best, left winger in the league this season. He's scored bags of goals, hasn't he? I'm pretty sure he's got to be top 5 goal scorers in the league at least anyways. He's probably one of my most exciting players to watch as well. And other players as well, like, Alex Scott, Tanner Villa, Tyler Adams, all these exciting players in midfield who, for Bournemouth at least anyways, have been absolutely exceptional. So I can't speak highly enough of Bournemouth and how well they've adapted to their team. For me, when you think about Bournemouth sitting in 9th in the Premier League, they are probably where you would expect them to be. But can they go on and push up for Europe? I'm not too sure. Maybe they can. I reckon they've got a good chance of getting Conference League. I'm not too sure about Europe, Europa League and Champions League. It might be a little step too far for them this season. But who knows? If Antonio Semenyo can keep on scoring the goals, why not? it is a bit of a tricky one just because, he has got a £65 million release clause, and who knows, if he still continues to perform this well, maybe a team in January might trigger that in the likes of Arsenal, in the Liverpool, in the Tottenham, who've been previously linked to the, Ghanaian winger, left winger, okay? He might actually leave Bournemouth in the January transfer window. Hopefully, for the Cherries fans' case, it doesn't actually happen, because I don't want to see that. I want to see him have another successful season for Bournemouth and then potentially leave in the summer transfer window of 2026, of course, because obviously, last season I did say to myself, was he going to be a one-season wonder? I feel like he's definitely, proven the doubt was wrong, proven me wrong, especially because, he's taken on that form from last season, and he's, scoring the goals, he's winning Bournemouth games single-handedly, isn't he? So from that point of view, I absolutely rave and I absolutely adore Antonio Semenyo and what he's done for Bournemouth this season. But for me, bringing me back to West Ham, just quickly ending the episode on West Ham, okay? Like I said at the start of the episode, for me, I think West Ham are the favourites going into this game, just because, they're on the back of, winning two games. They're on the back of winning two games just before the international break, and for me, I think they're going to take that momentum into this game against Bournemouth, because they've conceded so many goals. They lost 4-1 against Aston Villa, they lost 3-1 against Man City. So for me, I reckon, especially with the amount of goals that West Ham are scoring, if they can just manage to sort of, shore up their defensive structure, if you like, their defensive capabilities, if they can stay solid in the back under Nuno Espirito Santo, they might be able to get a win over the line against Bournemouth. Don't get me wrong, Bournemouth are at home, so that does give a bit of an extra added element to Bournemouth and the Cherries team, if you like. But so that might have given it, especially when you think about West Ham in the last two game weeks, they were at home, they were in the London Stadium. So from that point of view, we don't know their form away from home, because when we think about them away from home, they lost 2-0 against Arsenal, they drew 1-1 with West Ham, they drew 1-1 with Everton, they lost 2-1 against Crystal Palace. So from away from home this season, they haven't really performed that well. So hopefully, West Ham can start performing away from home in Bournemouth Stadium. So from that point of view, when you think about some of the players for West Ham this season, Thomas Souček is absolutely performing amazingly at the moment, scoring in 2 back-to-back games. Who else is there? Callum Wilson, like I've mentioned. Who else scored in these games against Burnley? Kyle Walker-Peters got a late winner for. Kyle Walker-Peters as well was quite of a surprising one to get on the score streak. Kyle Walker-Peters as well, quite of a surprising one getting on the sort. Kyle Walker-Peters as well, sort of a bit of a surprising one getting on the short. Kyle Walker-Peters as well, a bit of a surprising one getting on the score sheet, isn't he? Obviously playing at right back, but he must have got forward. Did score a nice little goal against Burnley, and don't get me wrong, Burnley did get a nice little. They brought it back to 3-2, didn't they? They couldn't do enough to sort of get an equaliser in there. So, from that point of view, they did have a lot of shots in the last game. Didn't really dominate the ball as much as they probably would have liked, at least anyway, but, made the counter-attacking options work and got loads of scoring opportunities from that. So hopefully they can do that again away from home this time against Bournemouth. If I was going to throw a score prediction in there, I'm going to say West Ham are going to win. They're going to win 2-1, okay. It's going to be a very close game, but I feel like West Ham will be able to score another late winner like they've done a few times this season. And I feel like they are going to get out of the relegation zone against Bournemouth. Might be surprising to a few people, just because obviously Bournemouth have been one of the shining lights in the Premier League this season. A lot of fans' second team, if you like, just because of the way they've performed as well. So from that point of view, it might shock a few fans, but I feel like West Ham are just going to absolutely boss it. Let's end the video with some quick questions, okay? Quick fire questions, if you like. Do you feel like West Ham are going to get all 3 points in this game? Do you feel like they are the favourites going into this game? Can Bournemouth sort of, get back to winning ways? Can Bournemouth qualify for, the Europa League, the Can Bournemouth qualify for the Conference League, Europa League, or Champions League as well? How do you feel about Antonio Semenyo's form this season? He's been your shining lights for Bournemouth and West Ham this season? Has Antonio Semenyo been one of the best wingers in the league? Has, Elie Kruper sort of been one of the most surprising strikers in the league as well? How would you feel about Antonio Semenyo potentially, how would you feel about a club potentially coming in for Antonio Semenyo in the January transfer window? Obviously, him having a £65 million release clause that's sort of come out in the media in recent weeks. And yeah, who do you think's the favourites in this game? What are your score predictions in this game as well? Do you feel like Bournemouth can get back to winning ways? Who needs the victory more, Bournemouth or West Ham? I probably would have to say West Ham, and that's probably why I feel like I'll have more motivation to get this victory over the line. Even though you probably would say to yourself, Bournemouth have been the better side. Even though you would say to yourself, Bournemouth have the better team, have been the better side this season. But yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one anyways. But before that, as always, please like, comment and subscribe. It's very much appreciated. And it goes a long way in helping me build a small community on my channel. We've recently just hit 258 subscribers. Can we go and get the big 300? I'll be absolutely over the moon. And yeah, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.